Thanks for joining me for a Kick Up the Arts. I am Nicola Meehan, and my guest on this episode is a legend. The last 30 odd years of Scottish culture would look and sound wildly differently and woefully less thrilling without musician and songwriter Emma Pollock. She's the co-founder of the Delgados and the Chemikal Underground label, whose bands included Arab Strap, Mogwai and Biss, and Chem19 Studios, which has welcomed Deacon Blue, Calvin Harris and Franz Ferdinand over the years. Emma's also an incredible solo artist, and we caught up at our kitchen table in Glasgow to chat about her outstanding latest album, Begging the Night to Take Hold. Or rather, we tried to, but we ended up reflecting on the ritualism of coffee, science and magic, broken songs, silhouettes, and getting by one day at a time. We sang the praises of female and non-binary collective Hen Hoose too. That stars Emma among myriad other musical wonders, and they are live at Edinburgh's Queen's Hall this Thursday, that's May the 28th. I'm going to be on stage in conversation with them as well. And there's a screening of a film by Zoe Patterson Macinnes that was made about the making of their fantastic latest album, The 12. Emma is the most warm, welcoming, insightful guest, and it was a pleasure to chat to her as always. And also, if you're on the lookout for a song that fuses visual art legends the Glasgow Girls and Madonna's Dear Jessie, then guess what? We've got you covered. Also, just to let you know, you're going to hear a crackle of interference from time to time. That's my kids phoning me to ask for money and me ignoring them. What can I say? It's a DIY operation. Anyway, get the kettle on. I'm particularly loving that we're sat at your kitchen table.
Yes.
Drinking coffee. It's not the first time we've done this. Sat there and had a blether over a coffee. Last time we did it though, it was a different coffee machine.
Okay.
It was a different kitchen and it was a different album.
Yeah.
And I'm particularly delighted by the fact that yes, some things change, but some stay the same. And one of them is you still make amazing coffee.
Oh, thank you.
It's a scientific art, I told you, and I was like, this is Emma Pollock all over, right? It's science and it's magic, and even down to the ritual of making it. It is an art form, coffee, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's and you mentioned the word ritual.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's one of the things that I do absolutely adore about it, because I was also saying to you there that I love to measure things. I love to measure all the food that I eat, particularly, well, I'm not going to talk any more about that because that's spectacularly dull. But
when you said that, I was like, really? What do you use?
Well, listen, my scales are one of the most important things to me, but
in all senses.
In all senses, yeah. My goodness, yeah. But so yeah, I think. I don't even have coffee in the morning as much as I do anymore. I have it late in the morning, and my habits have changed recently.
Yes.
And now my coffee is basically something that I look forward to, and I make it. I don't have a grinder at the moment because we're in a different kitchen, but I'm going to be. That's in the very. It's on the horizon.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And one of the loveliest things about coffee is just doing the research and getting excited about something that you might buy that might make your whole coffee experience just a wee bit more, enjoyable.
But why not?
Yeah.
It's like you took the time there to make it, and I'm happily watching you. It wasn't, you weren't showing off, but it was a ritual. It was a sort of a performance, And then I'm like, wow, you appreciate everything a little bit more. I do love your measurement of everything. Scales are important. It was also a different decade, frighteningly, the last time we sat down and talked about your music at your kitchen table. And before we no doubt talk more about the songs on the album and also being out touring, because I've loved seeing them come into life on stage. Mm-hmm. It's been pretty much 10 years between In Search of Harperfield and Begging the Night to Take Hold. But that's not to say it's 10 years between you writing the songs on that album and the songs on this one, right? Because I think sometimes we might just assume, oh right, you've wrote these songs this year and this is them coming to light. That's not what happened this time.
No, it really isn't. I mean, I've started talking a lot more openly during shows about the songs and how they came about.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I do talk about a bit more often now is how, in 2019, I took myself off to a little self-imposed writer's retreat where I basically needed to just get some space to write and to really, just push along the whole process of writing, because I do find that to be quite a difficult thing to get into. And then what was remarkable was that amidst all of the homesickness of being alone for 5 days and nights, but keeping in touch with family by phone and seeing my dad when he was still alive, and him picking me up in one of his old kind of not rickety, but barely any proper suspension in this old classic car that he had, and us just driving down to different parts of the coast, because this was in Galloway. I was where I grew up. And I had decided to take myself off to a place called Kidford, which is like a twinned coastal village with like a place called Rockcliffe. And these two gorgeous villages are separated by a big hill.
Okay.
And you can walk between the two, or you can drive like a longer journey in a car. But they're on the coast, the Colvend coast in Dumfries and Galloway. And I went down there and spent just shy of a week writing, and I had a keyboard. I borrowed a keyboard from Graham Smiley, my trusted keyboard and bass player,
legend,
absolute legend. And I had my guitar, and I basically and my iPhone, and I would go walking quite a lot and think, what am I doing here? Because it's actually, I find it difficult to write to order.
Yeah.
But in other ways, that's a lie. That's just an absolute falsehood, because I've been involved in too many things now where I've been told to go write a song, and I've always done it.
Yeah.
So this is more a psychological barrier than an actual factual barrier.
That's very true. Because I can think about so many different projects: the Fruit Tree Foundation, the Burns Unit, Hen Hoose, all of which are in finite amounts of time, and there's collaboration, and you can still do it in the confines.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
But every single time someone asks you to do something like this, you think, oh no, this is going to be terrible.
This will be the time it doesn't
this
work.
will be the time that I'm sitting there and like, Emma, have you got anything? No, I'm completely blank. But so that is a remarkable thing, that when you do put yourself in the situation, you've got to open the door before you can walk in. And it's probably just true of many things, many things, right? And thankfully I came out of those days, and I went home and had a bunch of recordings on my phone, and realised that I had some pretty promising ideas, and they became, at least 4 or 5 songs that actually reached the album.
Amazing. I want to know what they are and what ones led the way, but I'm interested in this idea that you took yourself away, to write and to kind of try and bring some songs to life. Was it because you were going quote unquote home? You could have gone anywhere presumably, for those number of days to go and to write, and was it important it was kind of home? Was it important it was familiar territory, do you think? I think it was, because I've actually got a really complicated relationship with where I grew up, because it wasn't really where I grew up. It was from the age of 10. But before that, my mum and dad, I was born in Perth. Yeah. And before that, we'd moved about, we'd zigzagged from the east coast of Scotland, which is where neither parent came from, back through to the west coast via places like Carluke, and Moffat. Wow. Okay. And then eventually, and Dunkeld as well, and eventually landed in Castle Douglas when I was 10. So I spent the formative years there, the adolescence there, and my mum. I talk about this quite a lot. There's a song about this on the album, but my mum despised it. She came from Glasgow, so she was a city girl. My dad came from Motherwell, and my dad's abiding memory of youth was getting out on the bike and going up into the hills. Yeah. So they were so different. Yeah, quite. They were poles apart, and so Castle Douglas was a haven for my dad. It was great for the bike, for the road bike, and absolute hell for my mum. And so I had mixed kind of feelings about the place, because it was a market town and a food town, and you could run about as a kid. You could run about in the summer months with bare feet, like an urchin, and you're kicking about, and it's the late 70s, and you're going to find your pals, and everything's within walking distance. And I really loved that about it. But as I got slightly older, I just began to realise that everybody knew your business, whether you liked it or not.
And I didn't like the fact that people knew who you were as you walked up the street.
Yeah.
I'd much rather be anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Do you realise something about yourself in that as well? Sorry to get distracted, but there's a lovely little bird up, and you've got a bird feeder, so we're like 3 floors up in your wonderful flat, and there's a wee bird.
Is there a bird there?
Yes. Look.
Really?
Is this quite...
Oh,
did you see it?
fantastic.
Yeah.
It's only been there for a few days.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's
we've got a little friend there.
Well, do you know what? I'm a bit worried about that because I think that I need to tie some threads round to make sure it doesn't fall. It's random.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh
yes. Once the
if it loses its suction, that's the only thing. And you just don't know what's going to land on it. I mean, imagine a cat tried to sit on that thing. I mean, how would the cat get up there for a start, right?
Yeah, but I know what you mean. Catastrophise. I'm exactly the same. I'm exactly the same. I can't tell you. It was a little bird. I can't really tell you what it was because it's kind of in silhouette. It's a gorgeous sunny day. Sorry, easily distracted, of course. But yeah, so that idea of home was complex, but the familiar territory maybe was something you did want to return to.
Because my dad was still living in Castle Douglas.
Yeah.
And so my mum by this point had passed away, and so my dad was still around, and I just thought, I think there was a pool there, and I have a love for the countryside down there. I don't necessarily want to go back.
Yeah.
So it's a complicated affair, but so going there and spending time there, and oh my God, though, I do have to say, there's a gorgeous wood in between Rockcliffe and Kipford, and it's managed by Historic Scotland, I think. And there's a bluebells wood. There's a wood that's absolutely, in the summer, in fact, round about now, the bluebells will be coming up, and it is the most magical place to walk. So I was really enjoying the spring. It was May. I was really enjoying the spring in a rural coastal area. Yeah. All the elements there as well. Yeah. It's right there. And the colour and...
So you weren't sure, you didn't necessarily have a great deal of faith in yourself that anything was going to have come out of it, but when you came back and reflected on it, you discovered maybe you said 4 or 5 songs. So were there any you identify, as being sort of early, not necessarily even forerunners or front runners, but just leading lights, if you like, with the way this record was going from that? What were those songs? Do you remember?
Black Magnetic was a really important song coming from then, because it spoke of, I would walk. So basically, I think I misspoke before. I wasn't in Kipford, I was in Rockcliffe, which was one of the 2 twinned villages. But in Rockcliffe, you're pretty high up where the studio apartment was that I was staying in. And then I would walk down to the coast. It's only a 5-10 minute walk down. And I would walk down at sunset or at dusk. And one day I saw some girls sitting on a rock, and they were just chatting away. And there was nobody really else around, because Rockcliffe is one of those villages that is well preserved, but also quite vacant. Yeah. And it's a sadness. It's a sad fact that often in parts of the UK and in fact all over Europe, there are old, beautiful places to live that are now, there's not enough industry, and so the youth are leaving, and the people who did live there either pass away or they move away and they rent it out. So it's not as if you've got a budding population that's about to move in, because they can't buy.
Not quite.
And so you've got this kind of ghost village, right? But there were these girls down the bottom on this rock, and I just thought, I wonder what age they are. They looked about 16 or 17. And they were probably, they were maybe of an age where they were thinking about what they were going to do and if they were going to leave. And I remembered how that felt. And I was definitely going to leave when I was in Castle Douglas, because my mum had implanted in my brain that, I was always wanting to go to university, and my mum had kind of made it feel that Glasgow was the main option, even though I did apply around about the country. I did end up going to Strathclyde University, and never really ever looked back after that. It made me think about that time. It made me think about what it feels like to know that you have got this future about to happen. You've no idea what it's going to be. But I remember going to parties in 6th year of high school, And I had a driving licence. It was really Californian, right?
Yeah, that is.
I would drive to the beach at lunchtime, and we would go into the sea, and then in the evening sometimes we would go back down to the beach, and we would have beach parties, and we'd light fires and things like this. So it was a really idyllic time in sixth year when I was 17, but at the same time, it's idyllic, but it's partly idyllic because you know you're going to leave it.
Sure. Okay, that gives you a different perspective on it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So if you know you're leaving something, it's a bit like coming to the end of a brilliant summer holiday. You know you're leaving, and you can even be really sad and really crying. But if someone said, do you know what, you could just stay, and you might think, oh, no, I don't want to do that. don't be daft.
That is an absolutely perfect way of describing that. And there is a complexity there, and there's a lot of affection. And obviously, was that sort of, did you remember even that feeling was sort of rekindled by seeing these girls, you know, you were like, this image when you saw them on the beach?
Yeah. Do you know what? That I will say this, that part of the world allows you to think. It allows you to slow down, it allows you to reflect. I do love to be alone, as long as I can call it a day when I'm ready.
Yeah.
Now, being alone, and being, even for that 5-6 day stretch, I'd never really been alone before, I'd never lived alone before. And I was struck by how quickly I felt really antsy and really needy of company, and I'd pick up the phone, I'd phone whomever, family, and but at the same time, it was such a valuable thing to do. You know, it's a really, I mean, I've often had much admiration for people who take themselves away on holiday on their own. Yeah. You know, I think people learn a lot about themselves when they take themselves away on their own, and they get to experience how they respond to strange places and strange events and strange people, and you learn a whole lot. Yeah. But even, you know, removing yourself from your whatever scenario and transplanting yourself, even if it's back to familiar territory, gave life to a number of songs, or what became a number of songs. The idea was there. Black Magnetic was the first one you've just mentioned by title, and of course that song gave the title to the album as well, Begging the Night to Take Hold. And you know, at what point did you realise that was shedding light and dark, I suppose, on the sense of the record? When did you have the album title? Oh my goodness, so that wasn't until many years later. Oh really? Okay, right. So the songs existed. Paul and I had, this is Paul Savage and the Delgados and husband, and we were mixing the record up until, I would say, September or October of 2023, and then my world was turned completely upside down because we separated, and that came out of a lot of things. Menopause was one of them, you know, lots and lots of things, very tumultuous things that can happen to anybody in the age, well, any age, but certainly for me, this was kind of a kind of very much a midlife kind of explosion of things, I suppose, that can happen to so many women in particular, and that's not to take away from the impact or the experience of many people of any gender, and I think so. I had to come through this period of two, you know. Now we're in 2026, and so I couldn't listen to the record for a good year and a half. Really, I hadn't listened to it. Okay, because the memory of it, the knowledge of the lyrics that were very kind of prescient, you know, they were very, there was clearly a lot going on in my head, even in 2019, that I couldn't name, and I didn't really know what it was, but it was a breakdown of sorts. It was a precursor to a need to reset and pull yourself out of domestic bliss, which I had been for a very long time. And you suddenly realise that, oh, wow, this doesn't work at the moment.
Yeah.
And you never really want to say the words anymore because that feels terribly frightening and final. So the words I think that we use in situations like that are, it's not working right now.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately that can be the precursor to something changing for the longer term, which can be extremely painful. And so it took a long time to revisit the songs, because then I was in a different place physically, I was in a different place mentally, I was in a different place in many respects with regards to family. And it was only in early, well, let's see now, it would have been late 2024, early 2025 that I suddenly realised, okay, gonna get this album out now, because the dust had settled just enough to not just be looking after getting from one end of the day to the other, which life was a bit like that for quite a long time. Then it became, okay, so there is a week ahead, and then it became there is a month ahead, and then you think, okay, there's an album ahead.
Ah, okay.
And suddenly, that you're able to step out just a bit longer, and you're able, and I speak for all women and men, people who have been through any kind of like really serious breakdown where your relationship with time changes.
Yeah.
And sometimes all you can be in is in the moment. And then you need to recover enough to be able to say there's a future. And then, okay, plans?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you feel that there can be a plan? And can there maybe be something that you can build and it's centred around something so precious as something, and so difficult to face as something that I had actually built with Paul.
Yeah, quite.
And so it became, I was extremely respectful of it, and I think I remain so, because I'm really proud of what it was such an incredible thing that Paul did in producing this record. And with Graham Smiley and Pete Harvey being the other two of the trio, the time that we spent during COVID, see, this is the thing, we got together in this brief moment during COVID when we were allowed.
Yeah,
we were allowed out.
Permission.
Yeah.
Permission to work together,
And we sat in the studio one day, like for a week in 2020. Paul was in one corner. There was me with the guitar, there was Smiley at this big grand piano that we'd hired. And then there was Pete with this cello, and they all had the demos. We played through the songs until we found them.
Okay.
We found the arrangements, we found the tone, we found the feel, we found the rhythm, we found the space that they wanted to exist in. And that was one of the most wonderful 5 days I've ever spent.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was absolutely incredible.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. I love the fact that obviously this is a solo record, but you speak so often about, and even you saying you wanted your solitude, but it's also about having people around you and the unexpectedness of that and the alchemy of that, and finding the songs. Isn't that interesting? The more of you that were there, in a way, the more you found them, you found the essence of them somehow. The word space is interesting. You've used it quite a few times, and one thing that fascinates me is that the album almost existed and had its own space because you recorded it and then you left it for a year and a half, did you say? So that's fascinating to me. There is also within the record a great deal of space, I would say, as well, lyrically, but also musically as well. And I mean, obviously, when I think to the very early Delgados gigs and the very early Delgados singles, they were just such an absolute burst of energy and noise and music. But if you're used to playing like that, there must be the kind of, it's not scaling back of any musical tension or any drama or any richness in the music. It's all there, but sort of leaving silences is that a bit of a discipline in itself, not to just fill everything? It's a bit like talking, isn't it? Are you okay to just go, this is going to actually speak more volumes if we let it breathe?
Do you know, I can remember the conversation that I had with Paul back in 2019 when I was standing in this studio apartment, this little room within the hotel or bed and breakfast, that I was standing there on this little retreat of mine, that I've self-imposed writing retreat. I have a conversation with Paul over the phone, and he says, do you know what, Emma, honestly, I think you should be working with Pete Harvey on this record. You should be doing something with the cello, because I mean, just imagine how amazing that would be to just have that trio and not worry about the full band thing as much, because I've done that.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done that in many different kind of guises.
So you're throwing away your record here. Unforgivable. But yes, you'd done that, that's right. Yeah. So this was a different dynamic.
And so suddenly, what is remarkable and really useful for touring is when you don't go in with the usual presumptions of bass and drums and then everything else on top. You go in with, you take out one of those elements, take out that really, really strong, loud, it doesn't have to be loud, but very, take out the drums, right? Poor Paul, right? Suddenly told to just put the sticks down. So we're there, and suddenly it's all about the song. And right, so here's one of the things I love about songwriting, is that you can write a song on whatever instrument you might be able to play. Yeah. But after that, that's just a vehicle to hear the melody and the chords and the rhythm that you've presented. Then you can take the instrument out again. Yeah. And you can say, so get a really great bunch of instrumentalists in. You know, with regards keyboard in this case, in primarily piano and cello. Yeah. And then try and the guitar where it's justified. And now play the song and see what it wants to do. And the song is still there, it's still intact. Yeah. But what you're kind of doing there is you're allowing it to find its own space. And so Paul was brilliant in the role of producer, in that he helped to push and pull and to basically sift between as subtle as how ornate do you want this piano part to be? Do we want it to be moving, or do we want it to be still? Yeah. Because all of these things were inferring a space that was the stillest that I've probably played with in my entire career. And you're absolutely right to observe that, I mean, the very first Delgados album, Domestique, was an absolute calamitous affair for the ears when you compare it to this last record. And it's lovely to know that I've now kind of got to a point where I don't necessarily need to keep adding stuff. Yeah. Although Paul and I did eventually add some drums towards the end, which I thought was comical because we couldn't quite stop ourselves from doing that. Yeah. And he did an absolutely magnificent job. And that's it, but you're right, you said the guitar when it justified itself, and I love that, you know, it's kind of going, okay, again, it's finding the song, it's allowing the song to find its own sound and its own space as well. I think it's in Rapid Red, there's this lack of space that strangles us, you know, so it's also about your own you know, I guess what you can see in front of you and what you can't. So Begging the Night to Take Hold became retrospectively a title which encapsulated various things, musically, emotionally, personally, physically, but I think we should talk about the way in which do you know what, I'm terrible for just going down a blind alley, but actually Begging the Night to Take Hold, that title, you're right, it was pulled out of Black Magnetic because Black Magnetic was a reference to being homesick and to taking refuge in the night by trying to just sleep. Yes. And then the magnetic appeal of sleep, and then Begging the Night to Take Hold, to be honest, was something of a reference to the breakdown, which had occurred not long after that. So, yeah, all of those things began to kind of talk to me in a new way,
Yeah.
Once I'd got over the hill, if you like.
Yeah, listening back to them. We did an event, you were lovely at it, Joe Mango, Amy Duncan, and yourself for the Scottish Mental Health Arts Festival. And as part of that, you played a few songs, and you spoke in a way that struck me as something that had been quite a surprise to you. You mentioned the word prescience earlier as well, which was when you look back on the songs that you had written, you were working things out subconsciously.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until you looked back on those songs that you became aware of almost where you were. What was that like? Were there any particular songs where because you seemed quite struck by this way in which you'd almost, through the songs, started to be able to articulate something that you didn't quite have the words for in the day-to-day
So that would
understanding.
That would probably be I Used to Be a Silhouette, which is now I kind of look at it and I think about the title and I think, holy shit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's because I was diagnosed with autism, you see, in mid 2024, and I think that when I wrote that song, because I wrote that song on guitar, and I wrote it during that week in 2019.
Okay.
And I've got the recording of it on my phone. And I wrote the lyrics. And I think to myself, I wrote those lyrics, like I put those words in that order. And all I could feel was a space. But I had no idea. And I'm not even suggesting that there's a link here, right? All I'm really saying is there was a need, or there was a will, there was a wish, there was something. Because when we write freeform, which is what songwriting is, when we write freeform, and some of us never really ever get the opportunity to do this, but when we write freeform, it's curious as to what we might say.
Yeah.
And it can be quite revealing and quite surprising. So for me, things like, really quite stark lyrics like, I almost woke you up last night to tell you you were screaming. I almost took a train last night to change what I was seeing. And I think there is undoubtedly, and there was undoubtedly, a need to think on an idea of a dissatisfaction somewhere, like a need to look at something in my life that was causing a great deal of pain that I couldn't really name. Yeah. And so I think that's what I mean by prescience, that I had absolutely no idea what I was talking about.
I wondered as well about that, the title, I Used to Be a Silhouette, in as much as I wondered if it was a bit about seeing yourself more clearly, understanding yourself more clearly, and seeing, maybe post-diagnosis as well, because it's giving you an understanding of things.
Yeah.
You can name things, You
can name things now. I think the thing about ASD is that there can be a filter. There can be an unfortunate filter between recognising who you are and what you're feeling, and and then it takes something of a shift of some description to get to the other end of that and be able to say, okay, I think I've got maybe more of an idea of who I am and what I need and what I might think about certain things. To be in the band for all that time had been at once a wonderful thing, because I found, I'm an only child, and I had found people to be in a pseudo family with. To be in the band and to in some ways to be a woman in the mid-90s, coming off the back of, feminist movements like bands like Huggy Bear and the whole alternative scene, I took on a role of androgynous, and I took on a role of, I am with Alan in this as a duo of songwriting, and gender doesn't come into it. So what I was basically doing for quite a long time was not really embracing what it was to be a woman or to be feminine. I was a female, but I was absolutely one of the boys. Yeah. And it took quite a long time for me, over the recent years, to kind of understand that, yes, it was a conscious move, and I'm glad that I did it, because I didn't want to be treated like, okay, do you want to step forward, Emma?
Absolutely.
I didn't want to do that. I genuinely didn't want to do that. But what came with that was also a slightly obscured understanding of what my own personality brought from a gender point of view, I suppose. I never really let that come through. That's not to say that I don't regret any of that. But what I will say is that there was a decision made by me and by the band to present ourselves as a united piece of like a united collaboration of 4 people who were equal in every single way, and that's easier said than done.
Yeah, quite. And as you say, then you maybe lose sight of yourself a little bit as well, because there is this disjunct.
The whole idea of what it is to be female now and feminism and all the rest of it, I've always counted myself as a feminist. But the way that the different generations of women and, people identifying as women, the way each generation actually goes about interpreting that changes dramatically. And it was and it goes with it goes hand in hand with how we present with regards to how we maybe choose to dress as a result of that. And so to be in the mid-90s, to be in a band in the alternative scene which was teeming with boys and the boys with guitars. And so I was essentially never seen in a skirt. I was never seen in a dress. I barely wore makeup, but I eventually started to kind of get into that towards the later years, I suppose. I really was, and I was a tomboy as a girl, to be honest. So this was my natural. This was my natural habitat.
Yes, but the discussion is interesting, and the fact that we have, platforms where, and lots of like the Girls Rock School, lots of initiatives that are actively saying, if it feels like a bit of a boys' club, here's space for you, here's a platform, here's accessibility, don't be intimidated. You're talking about those early days though, so I must have been seeing you performing then on stage for are we talking about 30 years, are we? We are, aren't we? Which is unbelievable to think. What's it like? I saw you at the toll booth and you were going over to Spain. Very different now, and as you say, in a very different place musically, but also with your sense of self. What have these big gigs been like, taking this album, given even some of its story we've touched upon, and the weight of it in many ways, out on the road? Because the gigs have been joyous, and you've been on, I've never seen you on better form, and I've loved that about them.
Well, it's been a surprise, actually, that in the past, lots and lots of solo tours, I've literally come home exhausted, bust, and in tears. And actually, with this album, I think I did that thing that people call manifesting, right? And I hesitate to use the word, but I've always been really nervous of ticket sales. The whole band were, the Delgados were really nervous of ticket sales. We would always, it'd be like, we'd be hiding behind the sofa before we kind of went out on tour. This time, I was working with a guy to book shows who I really trusted. Lovely guy, comes from the alternative scene, based in the north of England. What I really mean is this guy who I was working with wanted to sell tickets, but he also wanted to just put on really good shows.
Ah, nice. Okay.
And the finances of it were pitched in a more realistic way. I didn't worry about ticket sales as much. Now, what that meant was that I was more willing to engage with the actual ticket sales news as they came in.
Right.
And I thought, okay, so it's that amount this week. How many weeks have I got? Right. I need to do more social media. And so I'm kind of decided that rather than hide in the cupboard and pretend that the tour wasn't happening, and then inevitably for it not to do as well because I wasn't engaging,
you're in denial,
hiding. I decided to, with some help from some absolutely brilliant people who came on board with social media and really kind of showed me how to use it a bit more. I actually managed to just say, do you know what, this tour's going to be great. Doesn't matter how many people are in there.
Brilliant.
So what actually ends up happening in a situation like that is that you become much more engaged with it, and as a result, naturally, more people come because you're engaged with it and you're talking about it more and you're in a better frame of mind. And it's a bit of a lesson.
Yeah,
it's a real lesson.
Do you know this? Honestly, it's like it's like science and magic somehow. Okay, it's like it's part self-fulfilling prophecy and part just it's not a tangible quantity, but it's obviously worked. And the wonderful thing about that is then you're having a great time on stage. Everyone's coming out. Everybody's delighted then. But playing live is kind of still vital to actually, perhaps more so, to actually selling the records.
It's more so now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because what it used to be, the hierarchy used to be that a band in a traditional sense 30 years ago would definitely, first of all, put a record out, and this was the absolute, calling card. Got a new record, and you would try and sell as many copies as you could. So how did you spread the word? Well, you went on tour, and quite often touring cost quite a lot of money because ticket sales were low.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean that. Sorry, ticket prices were low, right? And ticket sales were low, but ticket prices were low. And we were going to see bands for like a $5 and things like that in the mid-90s,
totally.
and it cost a lot of money to go on the road. So quite often you would make a loss. And who paid for that loss but the record company that had put out the record? And that was tour support. And in that, you were basically saying, the record company was saying, we value you going on tour because you're going to sell a lot more records.
Yeah.
And that was the hierarchy. The record was first.
Yes.
And then you toured. And you didn't really get any money from touring as an artist. You basically made a hefty loss, and then you recouped that loss via record sales. Now, 30 years on, it's completely the other way around. Now, it is for a lot of indie artists. It might not be for some pop artists, but certainly for indie artists, the only space available to make money now is live. So ticket prices have increased dramatically. And in some cases, they're ridiculous, like for the big pop stars, and you're almost asking yourself whether the mortgage is more important or not.
Yeah.
If you want to go and see certain acts, right?
Completely. Yes. Literally that much.
Yeah, exactly. So as an artist now, there is no tour support really available from record labels because there is not enough money coming in from sales, because sales of physical product are now extremely low. And it's mainly streaming that people are using. But even though the majority of people are using streaming, the amount of money that's coming in from that is extremely low.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is that there's no tour support, so you can only go on tour if you can afford to do it on your own as an artist.
Yeah.
You've got to be in charge of everything. You've got to be in charge of hiring your own, the staff, whomever that might be. Do you want a driver? Can't afford it? Drive yourself. I even bought a camper van a few years ago so I could go on tour without having to hire a van. Right? I mean, so I've basically whittled away as many of the expenses as I possibly can to leave myself in a situation where I can go on tour with very few people. We share the driving, and it's worked.
Yeah.
And we even got to Spain in February in the most terrible weather, and it's a good job we had the van, because otherwise we wouldn't have made it.
Really?
Yeah, because the weather was so bad that there were flights being cancelled everywhere, left, right and centre. Ferries being cancelled left, right and centre. We drove through France to get down to Spain, and we had the most glorious time. Very tiring, but we had the most glorious time travelling round the north-east of Spain and playing 9 shows. And we had an unforgettable tour. But
yeah, the fact that the travels and the European gigs are still possible, I think, is absolutely brilliant. That you have that, and also that the songs had that space that you were able to go back to them. They'd found their own sense and their own place. Were all of the songs written by that point? Like you mentioned 5 that you came back with from that first trip, that little or thereabouts. And you mentioned Black Magnetic being early in sort of that process.
I think I'd written something of a summer.
Okay.
Earlier on, March Time, to be honest, had been a song that had been kicking about for years before. We just hadn't. It's written about Strathbungle.
March Time felt to me like it could have been on In Search of Harperfield. There was a sense of landscape about it, and digging into like your past. In Search of Harperfield, there was a lot about family and landscape and secrets as well. So that felt like maybe a bridging track a little bit.
Right. You're right. That's really well. That's well spotted. So from an archaeological point of view, that was absolutely that came from a different time and space, but it eventually found its sound.
Yes, totally.
Paul worked absolute wonders with that song. That was a song that Finlay Napier recorded first on an album. Now, what was really funny about that was that when Finlay covered it, I used to play it in a certain way live, and then Finlay covered it, and he did something that made it completely other. He folkified it.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, he played it in a time signature that I couldn't name.
Really?
It was really fascinating. It was great. and then of course Paul and I completely reworked it ourselves, and now it's in a third iteration.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
It's exactly what you're saying about once you have the song, its possibilities are endless.
As long as it doesn't lose the point of it. I mean, what I would say is that there's a line. I would say that sometimes if you go to see a live show, and I mean, if you love an album and the band get up and they're clearly a bit bored, right, and they just want to improvise in the middle of this song that you love, they're maybe not playing what you've got used to and guitar solos, that can drive a person nuts. Yeah. So I think you've got to be respectful of the things that make the song the song.
Yes, that's so true. I'd remembered, I'd heard a Kylie Minogue song that I love from her early-ish days, Hand on Your Heart, on the radio recently, and it reminded me of a similar story. Kylie releases Hand on Your Heart, Stock Aitken and Waterman. Then in the early 2000s, there was this lovely Swedish guitarist called Jose Gonzalez, and he did this sublime cover of Hand on Your Heart, because he's a beautiful kind of nylon-strung guitarist, and he brings so much, not more poignancy, because it's all there. He absolutely respects the song and Kylie's delivery, but it's a different thing. But it's the same song. 10 years later again, Kylie does an Abbey Road Studios album and effectively covers Jose Gonzalez. Right?
Wow. Okay.
Takes the atmosphere and, it's fascinating. So it's a bit like what you're saying. I know you took it to a third iteration after Finlay's version, but it's a similar thing in which it's like it can shed a new light on a song when someone else inhabits it and give it a new, focus or direction. But it's also interesting that its lifespan, it wouldn't go away. Yeah, it's still there. Okay,
I wanted to crack that because Paul and I were at the point where we were thinking it was never going to be.
It's funny, that can happen with a song.
It can.
Withered Hand, Dan Withered Hand, used to play these sets when he was doing Fens Collective gigs, and he had this song called Jubilee, and I was constantly at him to please put it on something, put it on a 7-inch, put it on a CDR, just give me a copy of it. And then he stopped playing it live, and then it stopped, and I was like, where is Jubilee? And I would I was obnoxious, shout at it, in a beautiful Fens Collective small church hall, Jubilee. He's like, I just don't know what to do about it. It's a broken song.
What?
Yeah, and to my knowledge, he's still not cracked it, and I'm still going on about it. This is well over 10 years ago.
Oh, that's incredible.
I can't get over it.
Yeah.
So I'm always, they have to be quite resilient.
So does that mean it only lives in your memory?
A little bit, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and hopefully in Dan's. Yeah, isn't that weird?
That reminds me. That's a really interesting thing, because that's what it used to be like in the olden times before recording.
Completely.
We would, music fans would go along to see a performance of a new piece written by a composer. Yeah. And then they'd have to just talk about it.
Completely.
And try and remember it.
Or I'd read about all these bands in the NME and in Melody Maker and in Sounds, and I'm in Stirling, and there's no way I'm going to get to hear any of them. So you almost make your decisions about what bands you like on how they're described, how they're written about. But also, so Jubilee, here's hoping, but you managed to crack the song, as you say, you and Paul, you got to the bottom of that. So what else do we have here that's got it? So you're saying we've got Jessie, My Queen.
Oh, now that was a really interesting one, because that was a broken song.
Okay,
that was a broken song. I'd written the bulk of it. Now it's about Jessie and King.
Yeah,
it's about the Glasgow girl. So a clutch of artists who had come out of Glasgow School of Art, and many of them headed to the Borders and to Galloway in particular because the light was so good.
Yeah.
And she was married to a painter, and I think he was E.A. Arnold. But he was better known and better respected than she was. They lived in Paris for quite a while, and then the First World War broke out, and they came back to Scotland and they settled in Kirkcudbright. And she was known as the witch because she only dressed in black. She rode a black bicycle and wore a black hat. And
cool.
Absolutely, and the kids loved to chase her down the road apparently. And the great thing, the point of the song is that in the chorus, like the first line of the chorus is, "Are you coming in or are you going out?" And the thing about Jessie was that she didn't really like people very much. She loved art and she loved artist friends, but she couldn't really bother with people. So when she answered the door at Greengate, which was where she lived in Kirkcudbright, she would always hold her hat in her hand, so she could say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm just going out."
That's a brilliant idea. Sorry, I find that very, very appealing. That's an idea.
I mean, what is the modern equivalent, given that we don't wear quite as many hats as we used to?
I do have, like, we've got in the hall, I've got a coat literally by the door.
Yeah.
By the way, that's me. I never answer it. I don't answer the door very often anyway. But if I do, it's getting answered with my coat in hand. Yeah. You just got a little bit of option there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, kindred spirit.
So the song was a bit broken. Melodically, lyrically I knew what I wanted to say. Melodically, there were just the verse into the chorus. The chorus wasn't good enough. Frankly, wasn't good enough. What happened was, I was in that week in the studio. We were all sitting around, and it was a bit broken, and I said, I was really frustrated because it didn't matter how many times I played this and I've got this new idea, it didn't stick. And then I don't know what happened. I went to the toilet and I don't know what happened. I went to the toilet, I was thinking about it, I came back, I wrote a new verse, and bang, the song was there. And it all happened within half an hour.
Yeah.
And none of us thought it was possible. None of us thought we could find the song.
Yeah.
And so then, for some reason, it reminds me of Madonna. It reminds me the melodic.
Yeah.
The movement of it. It's very playful. It reminds me of a Madonna song from decades ago.
Completely. Well, we are, if nothing else, kids of the 80s, right? Yeah, exactly. It's like all that, the absolute and the glorious melodies, but also the thing about so many brilliant 80s melodies, including that Kylie song I mentioned, that's very late in the 80s, but still there's a real kind of melancholy to a lot of them as well. So they can be euphoric, but there's this kind of like kind of sadness. I'm always going to fall for that. And so if there is a trace of that in your music as well, it's going to just like lure me in every time, isn't it? But yeah, you just give it time, and it kind of, the puzzle resolved itself somehow.
The puzzle resolved itself. And so, and I love that about music. I love that about songwriting. Sometimes you can, so another one that's probably worth talking about is Rapid Rush of Red. It's a really sad song for me, because it was during a period of like real unrest, I suppose, in my personal life. And Paul had kind of said during COVID, he'd said to me one day when we were housebound, Emma, you really, 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 really need to try and just keep writing, and he was being really supportive. And he said, look, I'm going to go out, but I'm going to give you some chords.
Oh wow! Okay.
And he gave me some chords, and they were pretty cookie chords. They were like, there was something of a diminished something in there. And by the time he came back, I had written that song.
Really?
Yeah. But the lyrics were actually really sad. They were really, really sad, and I don't play it live. Can't play it live.
I noticed you hadn't, but I didn't know. Obviously, I don't know all of the. I've not seen all of the gigs, but I also find it interesting that he was saying you need to write something. Like he obviously thought, this. You were saying about perhaps not at the same time, but this idea of what can you see ahead and can you see it? And I think there's a line that cocooned and protected by the silence, and is it sometimes safer just to stay exactly where you are?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is undoubtedly one of the safest places to be for a person is to stay.
Yeah.
Is to just stay. In the mind.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Not necessarily externally, but in the mind sometimes. Absolutely stay. Mm-hmm. Just be still and stay, and don't answer any of these kind of circling kind of thoughts and troubles that you might be experiencing. Sometimes it is repeatedly the case that we will just stay, because the comfort of what we know is, well, it feels like home.
Yeah, it feels like it.
It feels like home.
I think that's absolutely true. I do love the fact that a song like that is you can't play live, and nor must you. You don't need to do that, but it exists, and it's the whole album is stunning. But most of the songs on the album I have seen live, and most of the songs on the album it's joyous for you to be performing them. I do love the fact that these songs are just now out in the open, out in the daylight, as much as the night was obviously a huge comfort and necessity during huge periods of it. Do you keep writing? You obviously said you set yourself away. Are you kind of like, does it not happen until you kind of march yourself into a territory? You're not kind of like noting down ideas constantly, because it's actually been quite a few years since you wrote those songs, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
No rush, just saying.
Do you know what? Every now and again, if I'm rehearsing and I get bored, which happens, something might happen. There might be something that pops out.
Yeah. You've
got the guitar in your hand and you're singing and you're in the space. There has been a couple of things, and I've got my notes that I keep on the phone. Audio kind of recordings. I think the biggest question for me moving into another record is going to be what dynamic would it be? Would it be as still as this one, or would I want to bring something a bit less heavy into the next one?
Yeah. It's sometimes when you're not looking, it makes itself known, isn't it?
Well, that's true as well, actually. Yeah.
What's it been like just finally with Hen Hoose, with that collective, that completely different dynamic? You'd been in a band with three boys, young men, and then of course you've collaborated with so many different kind of groups over the years, but just Hen Hoose and making the record, and how does that kind of come to life, and what's that been like as a contrast to this period of stillness and solitude to an extent?
Yeah, I had to, so the Hen Hoose, recording that we did in May of last year, which was almost a year ago now, and I can't actually believe it. I had to steel myself to some extent when Tamara invited me to take part, because when she invited me to take part, it was very late 2024, and I had to she asked me, would you like to be part of it? And I just said, can't imagine it right now, but of course this will be then and not now, so how am I going to feel in the future? And I just said yes. Okay, yes, I'll do it, because I wanted to. I think sometimes you've got to put yourself in a position of the thing that you want your future to be without having the confidence to do it at the moment. And so that was a case of,
don't give yourself future you a choice.
Exactly. So future me was going to go write an album with quite a lot of women and non-binary individuals, that some of whom I knew, some of whom I didn't, and it was glorious.
Oh, brilliant.
It really was. Every day you had to push yourself just a little bit, but everyone was really respectful. And I think that was the one thing that I was slightly slightly nervous of. I was also one of the older people there, and I think that's a thing where you come out the end of COVID and everyone's that bit older, but when you turned 50 during COVID and you're thinking, oh wow, here we are.
Yeah.
and now it's a few years after COVID, so I think one day at a time.
One day at a time, but also, the fact that you did move to Glasgow and you did go to uni and that future was in front of you and you did start a label and you did start a band, but it wasn't like you were going, career plans, 30 years from now I will be... But one day at a time can lead to a whole lot of bloody years and decades of music and songs, and that's amazing.
Yeah, it really can, even though part of me has been fighting it the whole way and kind of thinking... but there's I think some of us exist to just fight ourselves, and I think unfortunately I'm one of those individuals where I'm never quite settled, and there's always something that's kind of playing in the corner and kind of taunting or daring or, but it very, very, it's not that often that I'd be able to say, this is great, isn't it? Which is terrible. That's awful,
I think that's a Scottish thing as well. I honestly do. I think that is inherent in so many of us. And it's like, wait a minute, things feel good, even for a moment. Where's the anvil above my head, right?
I'm just going to go and answer that door.
Take the black hat with you.
Oh, yeah. Go in.
Brilliant.
The great thing about living in flat is that there isn't quite this... Well, you don't get any cold calls.
Yeah.
Especially not the top floor.
Yeah, honestly, that is it. I'm taking that coat is going over my arm every time. Anyway, I have drank all my coffee. I've taken up all your time, and it's really lovely to chat. I can't wait to see you solo. I can't wait to see and hear more of Hen Hoose. And is it okay for me to absolutely celebrate and love this album whilst also looking forward to the next one as well? No pressure, but...
Wow.
I can't wait.
Okay.
It's going to be amazing.
Okay. Well, if you said so.
I said so. I'm manifesting. More than one of us can manifest. Thank you so much.
Listen, thank you. It's been such a pleasure. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. I don't know how to press stop now. I'll try. The ever brilliant Emma Pollock chatting about her superb latest album Begging the Night to Take Hold, which is out now via Chemikal Underground. And you can see Emma playing live as part of the Hen Hoose Collective on May the 28th at Edinburgh's Queen's Hall. What a glorious rammy that is going to be. I'm also going to be chatting on stage with Emma and some of the brilliant musicians involved, including ringleader Malka and Bossy Loves Amanda. There's also a chance to see Zoe Patterson Macinnes' film about the making of Hen Hoose's latest record, The 12. It would be really lovely to see you there. Hen Hoose are also playing in Newport-on-Tay on August the 1st, and Emma's playing solo there as well. And then you can also catch Emma live at Erskine Arts on September the 19th. Speaking of Erskine Arts, I'll be there in conversation with Nicola Sturgeon on the 2nd of August, and there are lots more live events coming up soon too. I'll tell you more about them as soon as I get organised. If you're a fan of music books, I'm chatting with Graham Thompson about his excellent new Talk Deep Dive at Toppings in Edinburgh on June the 1st, and I'm back there on June the 3rd with Satnam Sangeera and his brilliant reflection on all things George Michael. And speaking of books and brilliant voices, I'm thrilled to be in conversation with Jackie Kay at Scotland's brand new Queer Book Festival Out. That's at Stirling's Smith Art Gallery and Museum on my doorstep on October the 17th. Come to one of those events, come to all of them. We would love to see you there, and please share and subscribe to this podcast. Get in touch, whatever you like. Thank you as ever. Bye for now.